Good morning, everyone. So for this session, we have Dr. Laura Dunham, who obtained her PhD in English from Oklahoma State University in 2010, and she is a professor in English and technical writing at the University of Central Oklahoma. And she has been exploring the impact of generative AI on writing classrooms and runs a Facebook learning community to allow us and instructors to learn from each other. So I'll put that link, if I can copy it. Whoops.
Yeah,
Okay.
hopefully you can.
Yeah, I wasn't able to copy it, but if you want to
Okay.
put that in the link when you have time, and I will
Yes.
answer the chat as best I can, everyone.
All right. Well, welcome. And I'm trying to leave some space at the end for questions. So hopefully I will talk fast enough that we have that opportunity. So at this point, I'm talking today about AI as an ethical and responsible tool, as opposed to some of the things that maybe we've seen with fears about cheating or worries about that sort of thing. And the objectives for today are that we move past that concern about AI detectors and that desire to use AI detectors on student writing. And then also that we learn some ways to encourage ethical and responsible AI use by students. And I would also argue by us as well, because if we want our students to model certain behaviors or to show certain behaviors, then we need to model those as well. So, as we think about the rise of AI writing tools over the last year and a half, ChatGPT started in November of 22. And some of you may have heard me say that at the beginning of it, I was really angry. I was worried. I was nervous about everything. And I was like, what are we going to do? And then AI detection tools followed very soon after that. ChatGPT 0 came out. I think that may have been by end of December, beginning of January of 23. And I thought, oh, okay, now we can do something about this. We can catch all of the cheaters, right? But then I backed off of that really quickly because I started thinking about the logistics of checking every single piece of writing that my students were doing and what that policing looked like. And I was seeing people last spring who were saying, I run my students' work through 8 different AI detectors. And if it comes back as positive for AI on at least 5 of them, then I take them for academic dishonesty or misconduct or whatever. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, the amount of work. So, I've got 20 students in every comp class, and they're writing 3 to 4 papers depending on the class and all of the rough drafts and the reading responses. And I'm just like, no, I don't have time for that. But we saw all of these AI detection tools coming out very quickly to try and make instructors feel like maybe they had some control. And I think that's probably where a number of people still are from some of the conversations that I'm having on the internet right now, is that people still, they're not quite sure what to do and they feel like these detectors give them back some control in their classroom. But I'm actually one of those people out there saying that it's kind of the exact opposite. It's not giving you back control. So when we think about why AI detectors are a problem, they're more likely to catch your ESL and non-native speakers. And if you have any students where they're using Grammarly, in some cases we see universities recommending Grammarly. As an editor, I don't like Grammarly at all, but that's neither here nor there for this particular conversation. It's not, it is using an AI tool to change their language in some way. And so if you've got ESL non-native speakers using Grammarly to fix their writing so that it's more understandable or so that it sounds more like it was written by a native English speaker, then they're going to show up as positive for AI use, even if that's all that they used. If you've got your developmental writers, neurodiverse students, Whitney Gig Harrison is in the process of publishing her very small study looking at herself and a few other people and looking at their writing and putting it into AI detectors. She is neurodiverse. A couple of the students are neurodiverse. And then they also worked with some faculties who are neurotypical. And what they found is that her and the students who were neurodiverse were getting flagged for AI use at much higher rates than the neurotypical faculty members were. So hopefully that publication will be out sometime in the next few months, but it's really exciting to see that we now have actual research to show that what we thought was true appears to be true about neurodiverse students. Students who are not tech savvy are likely to be caught as well. And I continue to point this out to people that it's really not that hard to have AI write your paper for you, turn it over into something that looks like it was written by a human. So all you can do is, you go to ChatGPT, just to pick on one, and you say, write me a paper on blah, blah, blah topic. And it writes you, a 2 to 4 page paper, whatever you've asked it to do. And then you take it over to another AI program and you say, add some grammar errors to this, make it sound like a college first year student wrote this, and then you turn it in. And that takes you maybe 5 to 10 minutes for the whole process, right? So students who are tech savvy and who really want to cheat, they will cheat. Like, we know this. This is not new. And AI detectors are just going to catch the students who maybe didn't understand or who were struggling for something. All the reasons that students have cheated in the past, those are still there. We also have students who just might not understand the guidelines, especially if there aren't any on your assignment or if your institution doesn't have any guidelines. So students who aren't tech savvy are likely to be caught. And then we saw last year where OpenAI removed their AI detector because they said it wasn't good. And what I'm continuing to see is that with each of these programs, these AI detectors, their efficacy is being lowered and lowered. So, they started off saying, oh, we're 98% effective at catching. And then they're like, no, now we're 96. And then, oh, we're 90. So it's just going down and down. And, again, this is not the way forward, not if we want to have an ethical pedagogy. It's just not going to work to continue to try and use AI detectors. So as we shift away from AI detectors to what I call ethical AI use, faculty are not and should not have to be police. We are not here to try and catch every single cheater any more than we have been in the past. And what some of the studies are showing is that cheating rates have not increased since AI came onto the market in wide use. It's just that the ways that people are cheating have changed. So we're not seeing an increase in people cheating. They're just doing it differently and maybe in ways that we might find easier to catch. But we've always had students who belong to organizations where they might have a filing cabinet full of papers. And you just recycle the paper every couple of years, update a few things if you need to, and turn it in. That's not new. But we are not being paid to police our students. We are being paid to teach them, to engage them, to help them find things that interest them. So we need to shift away from that idea of AI detectors as part of our pedagogy. We need to move away from surveillance to reflective learning. And one of the things that I talk about is how over this last year and a half, I have had no obvious cheating from AI whatsoever. And I think that that's really important. We spend so much time in my classes reflecting on how the AI worked or how it didn't work. And they are highlighting where they've used AI and they're thinking about, does this fit into my voice? Does this make sense? Is the information accurate? And so we're looking at how to use it and then reflecting on if it worked for us in this moment. Sometimes I can write something with AI, like I can have it do an outline for me, and it saves my bacon because that outline is really good, it's really clear, and then I can use that for what I'm going to do. There are other times when I might have AI put together a draft of a report, and then I'm spending 3 or 4 hours trying to fix it and tweak it so that it fits my needs. I possibly could have written that report faster if I had just done it from the beginning on my own. So that idea of reflection, of saying, oh, the AI worked for me here and it didn't work for me there, that helps students to understand, again, what ethical AI use looks like. And then we have things like AI statements of use and disclosure statements. And different instructors are doing different things with this. I have my students color all of the AI generated text in red. I've been doing that since the beginning and I haven't shifted away from that because I found that it works. It helps me to be able to talk to them about their AI use, where it's coming in, where they found it valuable, where their voice is shifting in weird ways. And then also when we are showing our own students, hey, this is where I've used AI. And then they're coming back and saying, well, this is where I found it useful. And so we're all disclosing, we're all being ethical together and talking about what we're using it for. Other people have their students write something at the top of the paper that says, I used AI in this way, or I didn't use it, or something like that. So it kind of depends on what you want to do as far as disclosure goes. But that's a really great way to engage your students in these discussions about where AI is being used. All right, so some of the ethical frameworks. Principles of ethical AI use. We've got that idea of transparency again. Where did you use it? How did you use it? What parts of the writing are yours? What parts of the writing are from the AI program? The accountability. If I'm trying to pass something off as completely my own work and then there's some weirdness in it, then people start to wonder what's going on. Did I mess up? Is my information wrong? So there's accountability in saying, hey, I used AI to help put this together. I've gone through and I've read all of it and it should be right. It can be really helpful if you can have a peer reviewer or somebody else look over your work, because sometimes the AI slips something in there that you might have missed. Privacy. So when we think about ethical AI use, we're also thinking about the AI tools themselves and how much privacy they give us for our user data. And at this point, the answer is not much. If we are using large language models, those continue to scrape everything that we put into them into their databases. Small language models are something that I'm hearing more about with organizations and institutions thinking about building language models that are meant specifically for their audience to do certain things. So then that privacy can actually not necessarily be guaranteed, but can be a stronger space. So thinking about a walled garden where you have to be a student of your institution or a faculty member of your institution to get into that program in the same way that you would with your LMS. So the privacy there becomes interesting as well. That lack of bias, we are not there yet. So as far as bias goes, all of these large language models, all of these graphical generators, they all have bias in them in some way, shape, or form. And we need to be aware of that. And we need to think through what that output looks like and interrogate it and make sure that we are not just passing off whatever output they give us as valid.
You know what I'm saying? Whatever mine state.
Tamara, I think you need to mute. If you could, please. Thank you. So responsible use as well, like how are we using it? Who's using it? What are we doing it for? Again, are we trying to pass it off as our own work, or are we indicating that we've used AI? Are we trying to manipulate situations by using AI in unethical ways? That matters as well. So then that importance of human oversight and agency over AI systems. I was in a roundtable last week, and some of the people were talking about how they think coding as a job itself is going to be gone within the next 5 to 10 years. So they need people who can work with the codes that AI puts out to make sure that it's real. So that idea of human oversight within the systems, we need the human in the loop all the time for the safety to make sure that the output is not harming anybody in some way, to make sure that it's accurate, correct. Getting that bias out as much as possible with an understanding that all of us have biases. This doesn't necessarily, it's not a bad thing necessarily to have biases. You know, I don't like mushrooms, so I'm kind of biased against anything that has mushrooms in it. That's not necessarily dangerous to anybody else. But thinking about if I were going to show a bunch of different vegetarian dishes, I would want to make sure that there were some mushrooms in some of them. I wouldn't want my biases to shine through there. That ethical scraping of data. Have the systems built their information on ethical use? Have they asked for permission to use the information, or have they just gone out and scraped whatever they could find? We can also think about that well-being of society. So how are we using these AIs? Are there humans in the loop to stop the AI from, again, causing damage in some way? That ethical use of resources. And here we're also talking about environmental resources. How are we using energy? How are we using water? Every time we run any of these large language models or any of the AI tools to ask them a question or to ask them to build something for us, how much water is being used? Is that water in need in that community, but it's being taken away to run these very large computer systems. So we want to think about that as well. Okay, so then now let's move into encouraging ethical AI use. And you can see my website here if you were interested in looking at that. If you haven't been on there, there's a lot of information in there, and I continue to update that. So students need to know the rules. If the students don't know the rules, how can we expect them to follow them? And I realize that might sound kind of silly, but I continue to see people who say that they don't have any guidelines for their students. They don't have a syllabus policy. There's no information on their assignment sheets, but then the students aren't using the AI they want in the ways that the instructors want them to. Well, how do the students know if you haven't told them? So they need to know those rules so that they're able to follow along. You want to make sure that you clarify AI use before students start working. And one of the things that we are working on right now is getting some guidelines together for our master's students for their thesis and portfolio projects. And that matters all the way through their program, because if some people are going to say, yes, AI use is okay in your thesis, and other people are going to say no, if you've written papers that then become part of your thesis, how are you keeping track of your AI use throughout your program to know when you get to the thesis process what is and isn't allowed? So as we have those rules in place and then we clarify them all the way through the program so that students don't get caught up short at the end of their program and they're not sure what they wrote or what the AI wrote. So guidelines on every single assignment. How can I use AI here? Is it acceptable there? Are there things that you want me to not do with AI? And then explaining why. If we tell our students why we do or don't want them to use the AI, they are much more likely to follow along with what we're asking of them. When we go through promoting transparency, again, those author statements, reflection memos, how have I used it? Where did I use it? What did I find helpful? AI use disclosure. Tell students about your own AI use. Every time I use it, I talk to my students about it. If it has to do with their class, or if there's something that we're talking about that I can then show them and I can say, look, I built this thing and then I turned it into this thing. Or it gave me these graphics and none of them were acceptable, so I had to go back and make some on my own. So the bottom line is you really need to figure out what works for you. There is no one size fits all space for how to use AI. As we think about it for a teaching tool, you can help students build study guides. Students can build study guides. You can do that. It can be really helpful, especially in STEM classes where students need to know how this or that works. You can put together problem sets for students to solve. It can be used for drafting in any place where students are writing a paper. It can also be used for brainstorming. And I was looking over a really interesting piece this morning from Leon Furtz, who was looking at whether or not AI actually helps us with brainstorming. And I think a lot of this comes down to your personality. So the same thing with drafting. Some people find that the AI helps them to not necessarily be more creative, but to get to that creative space faster because they're able to get more information more quickly. They're able to get outside of their bubbles. Other people find that using the AI for brainstorming and drafting makes them feel a little bit closed off or condensed in some way. They haven't really put the thought and effort into it. So again, it just depends on what works for you. Case studies are great. People in HR have been talking about how they've been writing case studies and how it's so much easier because you don't have to worry about finding one that meets your needs. You can use it specifically for writing a case study that your class needs. And then lesson plans. If you are looking at anything for pre-service teachers, or if you're teaching a class that you've never taught before, or if you're just struggling because you're going, oh, we have an extra class period that I didn't expect to have, or I have to condense some things down because of illness or weather, then it can help you put those lesson plans together. For AI literacy, this is a big one. If we want students to know how to use AI ethically, we must take the time to teach them. We cannot assume that they're coming into our classrooms with an understanding of what ethical AI use looks like. They may not have had instructors who've talked to them about that before. They may not have had exposure to people discussing AI before, or different instructors have different ideas of what ethical use looks like. So talk to them about what that means in your classrooms. demonstrate those AI tools to them. I had the opportunity to give a number of guest lectures over the past couple of weeks, and most of the students had only ever used ChatGPT, and they were amazed when they saw all of these other tools that they could use and the research tools. And they're going, wow, this is really cool. And then some of them were saying, man, I wish I knew about this earlier on when I was doing all my research papers. So, walk through it with them and then critically interrogate that AI output. It's always fun to use Perplexity and see what it pulls up as its sources, because sometimes it uses things from Reddit, and it's good to be able to interrogate that with your students. Laugh, question, try again. Sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. With our benefits here, you've got the improved writing and research by disclosure of AI tools. And I've given a couple of different AI tools here. So you want to interrogate that output against your own voice. Does it sound like you? Is it taking you to places that you would be more likely to use, or does it not sound like you? Might save time, or it might not. It depends on the topic, how you're using these tools, what you're trying to do, and whether or not it's actually a time saver or not. It may depend on the task that you're coming to. All right, we want to make sure we're preparing our students for the workplace. So we're introducing these tools in low stakes environments where they can make mistakes, they can ask questions. We want to make sure that our students are prepared for that workplace and whatever is going to be required for them as much as we can. So just introduce the tools and help them play around with them in places where if they make a mistake, it's not going to ruin somebody's bottom line. For my own classrooms, transparency, ethical use, responsible use, these are my big things. So I'm sharing everything that I'm doing with my students. I'm showing them how to play around with these tools, talking to them about when things didn't work for me. Talking to them about feedback as well. So students can use the AIs to give them feedback for peer review. You can also get feedback on your own work as long as you're comfortable putting your work into the AI tool. That's the big thing, is you want to just make sure that you know that if you put your information in, then it stays there and helps to train the model. So some of the student responses I've seen, they've been wary because other instructors have told them any AI use is cheating, don't use it, blah, blah, blah. I've got some students who are unsure. So they're interested in AI, but they just don't necessarily see how it can help them yet. They're appreciative in some cases. They're ready for that ethical use. They've thought through it. They've said, okay, this makes sense to me. Let's try this out. They can also be better prepared then for college and beyond. And students feel really good when they walk out of the class and they go, oh, I've learned how to use this tool better. And then it's also sometimes situational. Sometimes students are cool with using AI in some places. Other times they don't see the benefit, or they understand how it might be hurting them. But these are the main sorts of responses that I have been getting from students. So some of the lessons that I've learned: be honest with the students about your AI use and about their AI use. Be transparent. Talk about AI use in your field. Again, I talk to my students about why editors don't like Grammarly and about the damage that it's doing to people's voices and how we sound. Play with the tools. Get in there. Play with them with your students, show them in class, do whatever you can, but play with them and see what they can and can't do before you decide how you feel about them. Be comfortable with that unknown, that gray area. I will come into class and I will run a prompt and I'll be like, all right, let's see what happens. I don't always know what's going to happen. I'm also really comfortable with the tools. So if it bombs badly, we can have a laugh and move on. So you have to decide if you're comfortable with that. And then breathe. The big thing here is that yes, AI is changing a lot, but it's also not changing everything. And there are still spaces for us to do what we've done before. We just have to shift and think about things a little differently. Okay, got like a minute. Anybody have one quick question, or are we all good?
Now's your chance, everyone. Oh, there's a message. Let's see.
No questions yet. I'm looking at the chat.
Laura,
all right. Well, you can, oh, yeah, go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I really like how on the previous slide you said just breathe, just take a minute. And I also have a tendency to think the sky is falling, and certainly AI is going to change things, but I think presentations like yours today help us weather the change and realize that it's going to be different, but these are tools to use, and we'll figure out ways to adapt. So I appreciate that pragmatic perspective.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. And it looks like I think we're at time because I think I had 25 minutes, right, Laura?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So if anybody wants to catch up with me, again, here's my website. You can feel free to email me. You can catch up with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to take friend requests there. And if you're on the website, the Facebook page is available there as well as one of the things that you can link to. If you do choose to go to that Facebook page, just make sure that you answer the questions or the bot won't let you in. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with everybody.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.